the helion cluster. Mira's fingers danced over the controls, the bright console casting a pale light onto her determined face. The helixes of stars outside the window seemed to blur and merge as they ventured further into the uncharted depths of the helion cluster. Garrow, as always, sat in composed silence, eyes fixed on the sensor display.
The helion cluster,
Garrow mused aloud.
Folktales talk about lost ships and ghostly echoes in these parts.
He glanced at Mira, a wry smile playing on his lips.
Makes you wonder why that unknown ship led us here.
Mira smirked, adjusting their course slightly.
Perhaps they're just big fans of ghost stories.
But her jest was thinly veiled. They both sensed the weight of their mission, the high stakes of their journey. Hours seemed like minutes, and minutes like seconds. As Mira piloted the ship through the dense asteroid field, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was as if the very stars had eyes. A particularly large asteroid ahead caught their attention. Its unique mottled surface seemed almost artificial.
That's where it went,
Garrow exclaimed suddenly, pointing towards a trace on the sensor. The unknown ship's trajectory led directly to that massive asteroid. Yet now, there was no sign of it. It had simply vanished. Mira's curiosity flared.
A hidden base, perhaps?
She maneuvered their stealth ship closer, the mysterious asteroid looming larger in their viewport. Hours passed as they studied its surface, searching for any signs of an entrance or any hint of the ship they'd been tailing. Garrow broke the silence.
We can't just float here forever. The longer we stay, the more likely we'll be discovered, and not necessarily by friends.
He was right. Mira made a decision.
All right,
She said resolutely.
let's introduce ourselves.
Activating their communication array, she began a broad-frequency transmission.
To the inhabitants of the asteroid, or anyone listening, we are Lieutenant Mira and Ensign Garrow, representatives of the Galactic Federation. We come in peace, seeking allies against a common foe, the Drac.
The transmission echoed out into the void. Minutes felt like hours as they awaited a response. Nothing. Just the silent vastness of space and the watchful gaze of the asteroid. Garrow's voice quivered with anxiety.
Maybe it was a bad idea. We've just announced our presence.
Mira, refusing to be disheartened, replied,
It was a chance we had to take.
but before another word could be spoken, an unsettling sensation enveloped them. The instruments began flashing in chaotic patterns. Garrow's eyes widened.
We're trapped.
Around them, between the swirling asteroids, thin beams of light began to connect, forming an intricate lattice. It was a force field, and they were ensnared in its grip. The field pulsed with an eerie energy, its tendrils creeping closer, leaving them with nowhere to run. Mira gritted her teeth, fingers clenching the ship's controls. Every training scenario, every drill they had been through, none had prepared them for this. For a moment, the weight of their isolation crushed them. Alone, in an unknown territory, surrounded by an unseen adversary. Yet when all seemed bleak, a voice crackled over their comm system, ethereal and strange.
Galactic Federation? Very well. Prepare to dock.
And just as suddenly as it had appeared, a section of the asteroid's facade shifted, revealing a vast entrance. The interior beckoned them, a cavernous expanse that seemed both ancient and advanced, bustling with activity. With a deep breath, Mira piloted the ship forward. They were stepping into the unknown, and the helion cluster's mysteries were only beginning to unravel. The heart of the cluster. The massive bay doors sealed behind them with a reverberating thud, ensconcing their ship in semi-darkness, interrupted only by the occasional gleam of luminescent glyphs on the walls. The hangar seemed a cathedral to the cosmos, with tall arches and patterns resembling constellations. Beside her, Garrow began a series of rapid scans.
No immediate threats detected,
He murmured.
but there's a lot of technology here I don't recognize. And the atmosphere outside the ship. It's breathable for us.
Mira pondered momentarily, then resolved to step out. She needed answers, and they weren't going to come from staying within the confines of their vessel. Garrow gave a reluctant nod, and the two ventured forth, their footsteps echoing eerily. Before them stood an assembly, an eclectic mix of beings, some vaguely humanoid, others less so. Their appearances varied, from scales to skins of varying hues, and eyes that glinted with both curiosity and caution. In the center stood an imposing figure, not for its size, but for the aura it projected. Garrow and Mira instinctively understood this being was the leader, or at least their spokesperson.
I am Silrex,
The figure intoned, its voice resonating with a timbre that was almost musical.
representative of the Helion Collective. You have entered our sanctuary, Galactic Federation beings. Why?
Gathering her wits, Mira stepped forward.
We seek allies, Silrex of the Helion Collective. The Drac menace threatens all in its path, and we believe that together we might stand a chance against them.
Silrex's multifaceted eyes assessed them, glittering with myriad emotions.
The Drac, yes, we are familiar with their tyranny, but why should we believe you? Why should we trust the Federation?
Mira took a deep breath, recounting their pursuit of the unknown vessel and the destruction they'd witnessed in the Drac's wake. As she spoke, some members of the assembly whispered amongst themselves. Others simply listened intently. When she finished, Silrex was silent for a moment, then spoke.
Your journey has been perilous, and your courage commendable. But understand this, Mira of the Federation, our mistrust isn't of you alone. The cosmos is vast, and not all its dwellers hold noble intentions.
Garrow, usually so reserved, interjected passionately.
The Drac's ambition knows no bounds. They've left countless worlds in ruin. They've developed a weapon that can annihilate stars. If we don't unite now, there may not be a later.
Murmurs rose from the assembly. It seemed the truth of the Drac's power was undeniable even here. Silrex raised a hand, quieting the room.
We shall deliberate. In the meantime, you are our guests. You'll be provided quarters to rest. We will reconvene once a decision is reached.
Mira gave a nod of gratitude. As they were escorted to their quarters by a Helion guide, the weight of the universe seemed to hang over them. They had extended the hand of friendship. Now, all they could do was hope the Helion Collective would grasp it. Once settled into their temporary accommodations, Mira stared out at the dazzling vista of the Helion cluster. The silent ballet of stars and cosmic entities was awe-inspiring. It gave her a momentary pause, a brief escape from the weight of their mission. However, the serenity was interrupted by a soft chime at the door.
Come in.
Mira responded. The door slid open to reveal a Helion, distinctly different in appearance than Silrex, but equally captivating. She stepped gracefully into the room.
I am Alira,
She introduced herself, her voice imbued with a curious warmth.
an ambassador of the Helion Collective. I've come to ask you some questions.
Garrow and Mira exchanged a glance, sensing the gravity of the situation. The chapter of diplomacy had truly begun. A game of shadows. The vast hall of the Galactic Federation Council was always an imposing sight, a blend of ancient architecture and cutting-edge technology. Suspended above the great round table was a vast holographic display, upon which danced the myriad stars and galaxies of known space. Today, it displayed the damning evidence brought back by the Sentinel. Captain Carter of the Sentinel stood firm, hands clasped behind his back, facing the representatives from countless planets. He had relayed the stealth ship's findings, and now, the data was playing out in gruesome detail for all to see. The Drac's weapon, a monstrous construct capable of extinguishing stars, surrounded by its support fleet. A hushed murmur filled the hall, occasionally broken by gasps of disbelief and outrage. The weight of the revelation seemed to press down on the room, a palpable dread that every member felt. Counselor Terran, a figure of authority and wisdom in the council, was the first to break the silence.
This is dire, our worst fears realized. And yet, Captain Carter, you risked all to bring us this intelligence. For that, you have our gratitude.
Captain Carter nodded.
The risk was necessary. The galaxy must know.
Counselor Drain, always the skeptic, interjected.
So we are to take action based on the findings of a lone stealth ship. How do we know this isn't some elaborate ruse by the Drac to divert our forces?
Carter resisted the urge to bristle.
The evidence speaks for itself, Counselor. Any delay might doom us all.
The room erupted into debate. Accusations flew, alliances were tested, and long-standing grievances resurfaced. For hours, the council clashed. Some members called for immediate military action, leveraging the full might of the Galactic Federation. Others pleaded for a diplomatic approach, hoping to negotiate with the Drac, fearing an all-out war might doom countless civilizations. Amidst the discord, a singular voice rose above the din, commanding attention. It was Grand Counselor Lorene. Her age and experience lent her an authority few could contest.
Enough!
She thundered. The room fell silent.
We stand on the precipice of annihilation, yet we bicker like children. This evidence cannot be ignored. We must formulate a response.
But what response?
Queried Counselor Vile.
Do we rally our fleets and march to war? Or do we seek peace even now?
Lorene looked around the room, taking in the faces of her peers, seeing the fear, the hope, the resolve.
We prepare for war, but we also send emissaries seeking dialogue. If the Drac can be reasoned with, we must try. But if not, we will stand ready.
The council members nodded in agreement. It was a measured response, one that encompassed the varied opinions within the room. As the stars glinted in the vast expanse, wheels were set in motion. The fate of the galaxy teetered, and every decision now carried the weight of countless lives. The Lion's Den. The vastness of space around the Drac-controlled planet was a serene blanket of stars, dotted with the distant glows of celestial bodies. The third stealth ship, nestled against this backdrop, silently observed the planet below. Its crew, Lieutenants Rice and Lyra, were engrossed in their instruments, documenting Drac activities and fleet positions. Lyra, monitoring the communication streams, raised an eyebrow.
The amount of encrypted traffic here is unusual. It's as if they're preparing for something big.
Rice looked up from his piloting console.
Hopefully it's not us they're preparing for,
he remarked with a wry smile.
Let's gather what we can and get out of here. We've overstayed our welcome.
But just as they began plotting their exit trajectory, a sudden wailing of alarms pierced the ship's otherwise quiet ambience. On the main console, the proximity alerts blinked furiously in red, signaling multiple fast-approaching objects.
What the?
Lyra barely had time to voice her surprise as the visual feed displayed a terrifying sight. Emerging from behind the planet's moon was a Drac warship, its massive silhouette ominous against the stars. And from its flanks, a dozen smaller, nimble fighters spilled forth, fanning out with practiced precision.
They were hiding behind the moon, using its shadow to mask their energy signatures,
Rice exclaimed, his hands flying over the controls.
Hang on!
He veered the ship hard to starboard, desperately trying to gain distance. The Drac fighters, like a swarm of predatory wasps, closed in rapidly, launching plasma projectiles that left brilliant blue streaks in their wake. The stealth ship's evasive maneuvers made it a difficult target, but the sheer number of enemy ships meant it was only a matter of time before they found their mark. Lyra, her fingers dancing on her console, worked to jam the Drac's targeting systems, giving them precious seconds.
Rice, I've got an idea. If we can dive into the planet's ionosphere, the interference might buy us some time.
But even as she spoke, the massive Drac warship fired a concentrated energy beam. A tractor beam. The stealth ship shuddered violently, its controls becoming unresponsive as they were locked into the beam's inescapable grip.
Can't break free,
Rice growled, frustration evident in his voice. The ship's thrusters flared in defiance, but the Drac technology was too advanced, too overpowering. In the waning moments before they were completely ensnared, Lyra initiated a burst transmission, directing it towards the last known location of the Daedalus. The message was short, desperate.
Ambush! Drac trap! Coordinates attached. Send...
The transmission cut off abruptly as the stealth ship was yanked into the Drac warship's vast shuttle bay. Inside, the atmosphere was cold, sterile. The bay doors closed behind them, sealing them in darkness. Rice and Lyra exchanged a grim look, the weight of their situation sinking in. They were prisoners in the heart of the Drac fleet, far from Federation space, with no certainty that their distress call had even reached its destination. Back on the Daedalus, the crew continued their vigil, hoping against hope for a sign from the stealth ships.